So I'm Don Vosburg, I'm an SE, and this is Joe Werner, he's product manager. He's here to make sure that what I say is mostly true. And he'll be helping to, if you guys have questions, because the session is being recorded, we're gonna want to make sure your voice gets on the recording and stuff. So we're gonna try to do a little bit deeper dive into what SUSE Manager 3 is doing with Salt. So how many of you already have SUSE Manager somewhere in your world? A few of you do, okay? So good. All right, so I know where to go introductory-wise. I once got dinged for presenting and doing too much informal polling. But the reason I do that is because I want to know where you are and make my talk different. My presentations are usually warm cookies. That means they just came out of the oven. So he asked for a copy of it just now, which is probably the appropriate time to get one, because there wasn't one before this. So SUSE Manager, sorry for the darkness at the top. We've really been strong in package management and patch management in the past. We took the project, started, actually the first release was in 2011, and we used the open source Spacewalk project, which was underneath Red Hat Satellite 5 and previous at the time. And it included a lot of code that needed help. So Johannes Renner here in the front is one of the key contributors to SUSE Manager. And he's been helping to make this be a better product. But we try to align it somewhat to upstream. So if you see the Spacewalk releases are 2.x, the current SUSE Manager before today, it was 2.1. And it's based on Spacewalk 2.1 plus some connectors that make it talk to our customer center. One of the things that we chose not to do with SUSE Manager was break its functionality with Red Hat-based distributions. So we still are able to manage both SUSE distributions and Red Hat distributions through the same interface. We realize that we are not the only Linux distribution in your world. You might have to have a rogue CentOS or a Red Hat server somewhere. Actually, I have customers that only use SUSE Manager to manage Red Hat instances. They don't even have any SLES except for the one that's underneath SUSE Manager. So it allows you to gain some control, and the primary focus, like I said in the past, has been on package management and patch management, which almost universally when I ask people, do you feel comfortable with how you're patching your portfolio in your enterprise? I have like one person raise their hand. I have customers, I go to their site and ask them about patching and patch management, and they tell me, well, that's something we really haven't done. We just use what's on the media, and we keep rolling it out. So I'm like, okay, so when you get security audit, does everyone get fired? It's like, what's up with that? But seriously, it becomes a complicated mess, and when you add other distributions, it gets even harder. So being able to do that with a tool like SUSE Manager has been great. We do some provisioning with Cobbler and Pixie Boot stuff. We haven't integrated the Salt side of that yet. That can use both Red Hat Kickstart scripts and SUSE AutoYoust. And the configuration management historically in SUSE Manager has been a static config file with no ability to be able to parse inside and inject content or validate for content. It's either, does this match? Yes or no. If it doesn't, I don't have any automated way of monitoring that. I have to go back in and query it again. It's all event-based. So SUSE Manager 3, instead of will-enhanced software-defined data center management, it is. Woo! It's here today. So we're going to be able to do more with configuration management using Salt. And you guys are the key helpers of that. We've injected a tool for customers to be able to figure out where their subscriptions are. Some of you may care about that. I tell people when they ask me what I do for a living, I say I sell free software for millions of dollars. That really doesn't usually satisfy the inquiry, but at least it gets a conversation started, right? But we do have subscriptions as a part, especially of the enterprise product, and keeping track of that for our customers so they don't get dinged in with some kind of audit later is important. And in future, we're planning on doing more with monitoring. The monitoring that was in Spacewalk was what needed feature help. I don't know how else to say that gently and nicely, right? It was lousy. So they actually dropped the original monitoring tool, and what we're hoping to do is do more integration with Nagios, Asinga, and some of the open source monitoring tools using plugins that tell it about what SUSE Manager knows, like patch status, things like that. So SaltStack, we announced, when it was announced internally that SUSE Manager team had chosen SaltStack after evaluating a bunch of other tools, CF Engine and Puppet and Ansible and others, most of us were like, what the heck is it? I never heard of it. And we were all like, oh boy, I hope this is the right thing. And then we started digging and going to the website and talking to people. We're like, this stuff, it's a perfect fit. It's a really good fit for where SUSE is with, not just with SUSE Manager, but with our OpenStack cloud deployment and with our storage products, SUSE Enterprise Storage, which is based on Ceph. So SaltStack is first integrated into SUSE Manager. I'm going to skip that slide because I'm going to skip that one too. I'm going to go here, okay? I'm going to do some live demo today, so we'll allow you to see interface and do some deeper digging into what we're doing. But I wanted to note for some of the people who might have used SUSE Manager in the past, we used to distribute it as an appliance. Now it's an overlay on SLES 12 SP1. So if you install our Linux, you can install this like an extension. All the compatibility is carried forward in SUSE Manager 3 from the previous version. This is actually a competitive differentiator. There is a Linux vendor out there whose management tool does not carry forward all your administrative things from the previous version, and they're not the same color as us. So we decided that's more important, right? And there's a lot of people who have hundreds of administrative sysadmin hours into configuring their setup and really don't have the money and the time to do it over again. So we bring them forward. And again, it's rebased on SLES 12 SP1, which is the latest release. And we've done our Salt integration with states. We're not at the, we're talking still Minion Master, okay? We're not up at the enterprise API stuff yet. So why do we want to do this, okay? Why do we want to use Salt? Well, before, SUSE Manager as Spacewalk traditional had very strict delivery constraints. So the initial client installs a daemon that's essentially a glorified cron. Every 4 hours, it launches a local executable called RHN_check and checks back in with the SUSE Manager box. So if you don't do anything, you got to schedule things to happen at least 4 hours ahead of when you want it to happen, because it might miss the window and your box won't pick it up in time and it won't execute it in time. And in other delivery constraints too, we've had a daemon called OSAD, which is basically a Jabber client. So the server runs a Jabber server, and when there's a job out there, it's sent a message. Well, that scales to about 200, and when you're talking to customers that have more than 200 servers, and a significant amount of our customer base does, we have to come up with alternative delivery mechanisms, and unfortunately, one of those solutions has been SSH, right? So we've been encapsulating our content between the clients and the server with SSH, and then we have a JVM scheduler. So this is a Java virtual machine, and it runs on the same server as the database. And if you don't reserve enough memory for it, it can starve itself out and die. It also does not handle concurrent tasking well. Things end up more sequentially aligned. So for example, we have customers that have tried to send out 100 remote commands, or 10 remote commands to 100 servers, okay? And have it take 4 hours to finish all the schedule, right? It's just like dumb, right? So lots of challenges there that have to do with how it communicates. And then, as we said before, the configuration management stuff was pretty rudimentary. I don't have any defined states or anything like that. So with Salt, now SUSE Manager becomes a Salt master, okay? So it's an additive function. It's not the functionality that it displaces all of what we used to do. So if you're using SUSE Manager previous, you can bring your portfolio forward, and it actually runs better in SUSE Manager 3 because we've done a lot of tuning, taken some of the better stuff from upstream and included it in the product. So the traditional client model is still fully supported. So if you have a large portfolio, you can bring it in and then experiment with Salt as you're ready within your portfolio to deploy that. So all the command line Salt features of Salt Open are exposed. So they're there. If you are a Salt CLI king, you can make this do some really awesome things, right?
And Don, one thing to add here, we've heard that question quite often. Are we kind of forcing Salt into SUSE Manager, forking it or whatever? No, this is a very loose coupling. It's using the API. So the assumption that we are making is that if you're using Salt the way you want it to use, yeah, you have to only be a bit careful about, not breaking any of the SUSE Manager integration in terms of where we inject pillar data and where we have our top files. But other than that, you can really do whatever you are used to. And that's what we actually did today in the demo. So there were resources in the file system, just in server Salt, where you would usually put them. And we just include them from those few states that you are managing from the web front end for those kind of last mile admins that just pick from the stuff that the others have built, maybe versioned in Git using pull requests for a CI workflow. That's really the idea.
Great. Thanks. So because this is our first exposure of Salt to our customer base, we really have integrated what I would call a subset of what's a very seriously reduced subset of what Salt is capable of, expose that in the SUSE Manager 3 web interface. So the features that are delivered there are going to be enhanced as the integration continues. Our development model for SUSE Manager involves 3-month sprints. So we do feature addition without number change. So for example, in SUSE Manager 2.1, we introduced major features at those junctures that were not a part of the original code. So we're not stuck here for a couple years until we release the next SUSE Manager. We can keep doing more feature delivery. So because this is the first one and the first Salt exposure for a lot of our customers, we anticipate a lot of assistance in making it better soon. So the initial release includes these things. Remote commands, so obviously we have a UI from the beginning that's been able to do the remote command stuff. We get package states and custom states. Obviously we do the high state thing. I mean, that's part of it, but I'm specifically going to show you a little bit more about what we do with package states in this session, and a little bit about custom states. We already showed those in the main session. So, and then we take advantage of what SUSE Manager already has within the organization and group structures to be able to then deliver state assignments. So this is one of the things administratively that SUSE Manager has had as a strength. You can create multiple organizations. In other words, you could basically be multi-homed on the same SUSE Manager server. So you could say this organization only can see these repositories and all my systems register with that organization, and then this organization does that. So if you're really super siloed, you can do that. We also have group structures that are really an open tool for you to be able to create it by geo, by function, and or all of the above in terms of role-based administration, the system groups are the key to be able to divide up responsibility within the SUSE Manager interface. So these are things that we've already had in place, and now we've added the state assignment and SALT integration there.
And actually, that last part took me kind of by surprise myself. Just combining those existing paradigms, so I can just take machines, group them into groups, and have those overlaid groups, and then assigning states to that. It's so powerful because on the one hand side, you have all the power in Salt to write very complicated formulas for very advanced setups with a lot of declarative state, but then make it very easy to match them. So you don't have to, add machines to top files and do that manually. Just from the web UI, you make them join a group and you say, okay, you are now in the group web service, so that means the web server state applies. That's so powerful, and of course we have a lot of data. We have the full software and hardware inventory, which we are going to expose as pillar data. So just those two paradigms, pillar data and the group system, are a lot of extra value on top of plain open source and command line sort. I mean, open source, everything is open source at SUSE.
And just in the time that I've been here since Sunday, where I very rarely left the lab hotel room that Joe has shared with me and Johannes, the three of us have been there all hours of day and night working on this stuff. It's amazing to see how this stuff is kind of getting woven together. It's like half the time I'm working on a SALT thing, and then oh yeah, this ties in with this SUSE Manager thing, and it really does work. It works a lot better than I thought. So if you want to review the slide set, obviously I made those available on PDF. The SUSE Manager wiki is where a lot of our documentation gets put. Some of the stuff that's in there isn't even in the official docs at all, and it might be very useful in implementation stuff. I've contributed a little bit to that. And then there's upstream docs on SALT, like Tom referenced this morning. We came in so late to SALT. When we saw it the way that it is now, we're all like, oh my gosh, this is so much better. I got a real tutorial. Okay, so yeah, that's it. So now I'm going to show you a little bit with the demonstration. And then we'll open it up for a Q&A, okay? So like before, this is a live demo. So expect wonderful things. So right now I have, this is running on VMware, and I have the SUSE Manager server. I'm going to bring up some of these other guys so we can actually see what's going on. So let me walk you through the interface while I'm powering these on, and hopefully my computer will survive it. Let's go here. Okay, when you log in at first to SUSE Manager, you can see this is where the role-based administration part comes in. If I log in as the super awesome user, I can see all the systems. If I only have restriction to certain system groups, I don't even see the other ones. And we've had some struggles trying to make SALT recognize those boundaries. That's been one of the integration fun things. He's not even paying attention. Look at him over there. He's still fixed. It released already, okay? So anyway, yeah. So I'm going to log in as the super awesome administrator of all things. So when you first log into SUSE Manager, you have an overview screen, and these panes are adjustable based on user base, and they try to give you some broad overview information like most critical systems. In this list, a criticality is determined by unapplied security patches, not as to function within your organization, right? That's for you. As any sysadmin tool, SUSE Manager does not prevent stupid. So if you have enough power or you give it to the wrong person, you can expect bad things to happen, okay? So be careful, right? It has a lot of cool things. But you'll notice in this list that I have a RHEL 7.2 server and a CentOS 7 server, along with my SUSE servers. So we have a supported way for you to have Red Hat systems integrated into SUSE Manager, actually 2 different options. You can purchase a Red Hat subscription from us that's called Expanded Support, where we deliver all the patches and you don't have to talk to the people in North Carolina anymore. That works pretty well, and I have those channels mirrored on this demo system. And then with that subscription, you can also get support for a CentOS box. So if you use our channels in CentOS, you can get support. Don't look at me funny. Now you can also do native Red Hat support now, and this has been new within the last 6 months. So if you have a Red Hat subscription, you can go to your customer portal and download the manifest, and we have some instructions on how to do that. It contains a certificate that has your organization's entitlements, and you can import those certificates into SUSE Manager and replicate the repository structure that you have entitlement to it on the Red Hat Customer Delivery Network. This has been validated by numerous really large customers for us. Obviously, you don't call us for support on the patches, but on the management process and the SUSE Manager portion itself, it's a supportable environment as long as you buy a lifecycle management subscription to go along with that. So in this case today, I only have SUSE systems powered on because really I only turn my Red Hat on when I need it, and I don't need it. So this is terrible, isn't it? But yeah, so when I register a box, like we said before, the first thing you have to do is make sure that it's onboarded so that secure exchanges has taken place. We created a place for you to do that one by one in the interface, but obviously the command line enablement or configuration, you can configure it to auto onboard if you want. It's just we've learned a lot from being an enterprise vendor that different people have different ideas of what secure connection should be and who should authorize that. So we made it so you have to onboard it in some way by default. Were you going to say something?
No, I was just thinking of a customer who at the same time complained about us having to use passwords for the API. So the user has to know the password and we don't expose passwords, but then they want auto joining the machine.
Yeah,
so
they auto register all their machines. So.
Security policies are always a mixed
Lordy
bag,
me.
and it's always a fine line between fully automating things and keeping
I
things
love
secure.
you guys, but don't be that customer, okay? Don't be that customer. No, there ain't no fix for that.
But we give you all options from basically opening up all the ports, everything is open, to highly secure setups where you have to always distribute keys upfront or have to accept every single key.
So I'm going to take a look at one of our servers here. This is the media server, and this one is a Salt managed server. And the interface collects data about the system, so I can know what the host name is, IP address. The hypervisor is not getting super well enumerated yet, but we're working on it, right? So it assigns software channels. So these channels happen to be mostly ones that are delivered by SUSE. On the other hand, if you know Spacewalk or if you know how to handle Yum repositories, you can actually create your own channels. So you can either create a staged environment where your patches go from these are what I know works in production, these are things I'm validating, or these are just the raw SUSE patches. Because very few people will take a patch at the moment it's delivered and put it on their production system. Anybody here do that? Good, then I have prevented some stupid. Because that will shorten your career span, right? As soon as you put a new kernel on and it pukes everything. I did that last week actually with the Badlock vulnerability with Samba. I managed my school's servers, and I put the latest Samba on that fixes bad lock, and none of the machines were joined to the domain anymore. So that was kind of a bad thing. It's a security fix, right? No one's gonna hack in when they can't log in at all. Yeah, it was an enhancement.
Again, talking about the Salt integration, this will all look familiar to you guys. So when we talk about all this hardware data and software data, basically we are using grains, obviously. So we have just extended the grains to collect a few things that weren't available yet. And then the channels, for example, those are exposed in the pillar data, and we are then rendering channel configuration from pillar data that SUSE Manager exposes. So it's really using the native stacks wherever we can.
So we have the ability to parse the metadata around patches that tells you whether a patch is critical or just a bug fix or maybe just an enhancement. So in this case, this server has 9 critical patches that are available to it. So if I look at this one, this is moderate, this is an important one, this is basically an update to the kernel. When I want to look at the patch itself, it gives me a great amount of metadata, including all the things that it fixes, which is, there's quite a few here. I might want to apply this one. And then I get the actual CVEs. So if I copy this, and CVE, for those of you who don't know, is common vulnerability and exposure, right? So in here I've got this 3139. If I want to know across my portfolio, one of the features I can do with SUSE Manager is run a test for this one, which is this year, right? So it's 2016. Let's make sure that that's good. I can actually audit my portfolio across all the distributions I'm managing, across whether they're SALT or traditionally managed clients, and get a view of how vulnerable I am to certain issues. And I can test this pre-patch and post-patch. You can see some of them, okay, it's not determining my patches. What's the matter with that CVE audit thing? Actually, if I look for this one, for example, yeah, he doesn't want to talk about it. Do I need to go out to here? Oh, wow, okay. I'm learning things from developer guy that I didn't even know. Oh, yeah. Okay, so if I go down here, this one, I didn't even know that was here. You are amazing. So, zing! Yeah, he's fixing stupid, isn't he? So seriously, I know how to get there from a different way. That's just a shortcut, right? I've been on this page. Yes, I realize that. So we have task schedules that are a part of the management server itself that go out and do a number of different things. One of those is align my systems to the channels they're assigned. And that happens at 11 o'clock every night. And since I've not done that today, I'm going to go ahead and run that now. It doesn't take it very long, but essentially connects the CVE vulnerability and the systems and the channels that they're assigned to together. There's a bunch of these task schedules that are out here, one of which is an errata cache. So when I onboard a new system, at first it looks like it's all fully patched, and then it catches up the schedule to it, and I'm like, oh no, this is really not good. So I can go back here to this CV thing and see that it finished. So according to the system clock, it's 1:16, so I know where I am time-wise, right? So now I can go back and do my audit again, right? So this was 3139, right? Let's see what happens. So when I audit systems, it can tell me several things. It can tell me if it's affected, and I have patches, but it's not assigned to that channel. Yeah, this looks better, don't it? Yeah, you're awesome. You're awesome. So now I can see, you know, I've got these this patch, this SLES 12 SP1 patch that I need to deliver to this guy. Now, a patch is way different from an RPM or a package fix because it's metadata that can contain multiple RPMs. So it fixes vulnerabilities not just with one, but with a bunch of them. So if I want to install a new patch to this system, I can fix that one. I can look at any one of these and say, okay, so I want to install a patch into this one, and I can look for that, that vulnerability and assign it again here, right? So which one was that? Let's go back. Let me run this again here. So this is one of the things we're hoping to do with Salt in future is try to capture some of this data and turn it into a state that we can apply right away. So, but in this case, when I install, I sort of lose my search. So I'm going to look for this 2016-600. So you can look at systems either from the patch itself, and here I'm going to filter this. I'm looking for 2016-600. Here it is. So if I look at this patch, it tells me all the affected systems. So instead of looking at it from a system basis, I'm now actually looking at it from the patch. And if my systems are either traditional or Salt, they can still all be patched with that. I don't think I have all these turned on, so I'm only going to do 3 of them here. So I'm going to select these guys and say apply patches. The scheduler allows me to add this to an action chain so I can do other things with it. So even if I don't have a configured Salt state, I should be able to do this. But these are Salt connected. Is action chaining going to work? This is a bug. So anyway. Yeah, so we use Salt now. We used to have to create this, but now we have Salt, so we have states, right? So when I confirm this, and then it sends them out to the scheduler. When I look at the schedule before Salt, I was actually at a customer a week and a half ago who has SUSE Manager 2.1, and before Salt, he would be able to sit here in the pending actions and see that stay for a really long time. And then he would have to check with the server to see if it's really communicating. And oh my gosh, is it actually doing anything? And then we did it with Salt in his environment, and it was not on a single laptop. It actually occurred very quickly, much faster than it ever has before. So the enhancement of integration with Salt in this environment has been pretty terrific. So this will show me all the systems that it scheduled this for, and as the minions run it, I get a complete audit trail of history on each of them. So let's see if I can see my event history on this guy. So you can see where it's applied states. If I've modified a package, this is actually run by the Salt beacon thing, isn't it? Yeah, this is an experimental thing, right? Yeah. Well, you know, I feel better after watching Tom's presentation that we're not the only ones that it's under active development. That's the euphemism for it's broke, right? Yeah, it's not in the release. So yeah, he and I have been playing with it and found some interesting anomalies. But apply states is very good.
Yeah.
And just like we exposed out here at the keynote, this is actually the YAML output from SaltState that's being parsed so it appears nicely in the web interface. So you can see whether the result is true on all of these things, and it's doing a variety of different things. This one's killing off the service. This one's managing a file, and it's make sure and sees it says it's in the correct state. If the file doesn't exist, it will create it. You know, all the things that Salt is really good at. But you can see here, our event catalog, which is coordinated with our schedule, is coming up with a Salt output and making it useful for our customers, right? Cool, huh? Okay. So let's see if my schedule finished. If it didn't, I'm in trouble. Yeah, okay, so this is a live demo, and why is it failing? Why is it still pending? Why is it still pending? Yeah, there's a bunch of reasons, right? Yeah, bug, yeah. So on the SUSE Manager server, this is actually the Salt master, so I can do the Salt, normal Salt things with it. Let's see who's up, right? Test.ping. I should see some stuff. So I see balancer and web.
Yeah, again, I mean.
Yeah?
This is the, so the error comes from the proxy module that we added for the demo. That's basically, of course, not a real Linux system, but a Linux system that behaves like a Philips Hue lamp controller. So
Yeah, so this was
if you want to patch that one, it will probably fail.
Right, right. We didn't set this up as, it's not running Salt Minion, it's running SaltProxy. So it doesn't communicate the same way as my normal clients would, and I do have some hanging up, and that's the reason why it's tanking, right? So I can do whatever normal saltish things that you might do from here. One of the things that we did was we created a command to do the lights, and I'll show you this under the covers. User, local, bin, have, there. So we did this salt proc, and we pointed it at the proxy, and told it to change this hue definition that's for these lights. So all the hues, let me make this a little bigger. Is that better? All that stuff is in SRV. Is it under Reactor? Yeah, so we use Reactor stuff for these things. So we assign certain servers to certain lights. So if I cat, for example, media 1, start, here's what it does. It changed the color. We told it to look at the proxy minion from the proxy that's talking to the lamps, and it tells it to turn it blue on lamps 7, 8, and 9. So this was how we kind of did the demo under the covers, was applying these things and testing it. You can see the time and date stamps are relatively recent. There was a good reason for that.
One other thing you could show on the command line is just doing a pillar items on one of the servers like Web1 or so that is running to see how we expose the groups in pillars.
Like that?
No, items.
Items?
Yep.
Oh.
Exactly.
Like this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Cool. So you want to explain this output?
Yeah, so the ones that look complicated are basically channels with the tokens you need to access those channels, and this will render into basically repo.md config files on the managed clients. And there also is up there, there must be a section where we just have the groups. No, that's channels, so it's probably down there. But I think, Johannes, you could just like item groups or whatever it is. There it is, group IDs. Yeah, so it's yellow on white, but this is basically the two groups that the machine is in, and it's in one org. And then you can use that from your own states or use it from execution modules, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, so these group IDs associate with SUSE Manager system groups, right? So then when you see the state application, it returns back the custom underscore ID. So it's essentially created them as custom states and associated them with that group ID, right? I make sure I'm talking right. I'm sitting here with people that know more than me, right? On the group IDs, when I do, like if I look inside of SUMA here, and I see an event history, so here, like a state applied, right? Yeah, the patch update finished, right? That's cool. So if I look at this, so it's, In the
include package updates with more than one package, of course. So it would also use what packages were added.
And this also shows you too, one of the, and this is a key thing if those of you who are Linuxy people, is that you have more than one kernel. So now instead of just the old kernel of 1.2, I've got 1.2 and then I've got the one that ends in 35.1. So I have multiple versions of the kernel. I retain the old one. And we're still trying to sort out how it parses whether the patch is still applicable because it sees the old kernel and goes, oh, you didn't patch it yet. And so we're still trying to figure some of that out. But this is how the salt output works. On an individual box, if I go to the states on an individual server, I haven't shown this yet. This is something I wanted to show here.
Yeah, I think the best example is to make sure that you're using the right editor on your box.
Like VI?
I said the right editor.
Yeah, what are you talking about? Me? Am I the wrong editor? Okay, so here you'll see under states, and this is totally new since we've had the salt stuff. Obviously, we didn't have anything like this. But you can create package states. So this one happens to be applied at the activation key. So when I register a system with SUSE Manager, I can assign packages at that point based on that activation key. It creates a package state for that salt system that says that this has to be installed.
Now let's show a package state where the company policy is that you can't use Emacs, you have to use VI.
Emacs? Yeah, so who likes Emacs in here? If you do, you're in the wrong session. I'm just saying. So I can set a policy by default if I search for Emacs and it's looking at all the packages that are applicable specifically to this system. It's not looking at all the packages that are possible in the history of Linux, okay? So here I can leave it unmanaged, which means I don't really care about policy. You can have it there or not. Or I can say, I want to make sure it's removed. So once I make a change, I click on the changes and acknowledge them and save them, and then I can apply that state to that system. So this will make sure that Emacs is removed every time the state gets applied. Yes, it will remove dependent packages. So be careful. Yeah, so be careful how you do this. I can be stupid and remove a package whose one of its dependencies is RPM. I've done this before, and uninstalled RPM from a system is kind of like, yeah, I unplugged the projector at that point. It's fairly much a hack, right? So yeah, Emacs, I've now banned Emacs. Or I can search for any system that I haven't installed yet, like Nmap, which I use for fun. And I want to say it's installed. When I do, I tell it I can either have any version or the latest. So this is the way it's laid out right now. We haven't had enough people say, oh, I want more choices than just latest or any. So whatever, I don't care. Yeah, but then you start getting into some weird database query stuff that might be problematic, right? Yeah, so underneath SUSE Manager is PostgreSQL, which hopefully all of you have great expertise and love for, right? So as you noticed inside of the group thing and the state library, we can do custom states. So I can not only do that at a system-wide level, I can apply them on a particular salt minion itself if I wish. So the same things that I can look for in the wide world, I can see if I can make this guy a web server. I can assign that one here, where I might assign it more traditionally would be through a group construct, because if you have hundreds or thousands of servers you're managing, doing them individually like this is not as practical. But you can do that and assign those on a system basis if you have an exception box or anything that you want to do in terms of state applying, right? And then, of course, you have the ability to capture the high state data. So now I can see all of this high state data on this box, which is pretty detailed, right? Cool? Okay, any questions? Wow, this is great. Okay, so the question is, do you have the ability to deploy non-packaged binaries? You can do anything you want to if you really need to. So you can do something like this, right? Do a remote command that does a wget.
And of course, anything that you can deploy through the Salt file system mechanisms would work. So you can have a state, like what I did for the images for the web server, of course. This all is distributed through the Salt file system. What we haven't done, and that was on purpose, is really allow for other packaging mechanisms than RPM. In the long run, we think it's always good to have a mechanism instead that packages up things in RPM, signs them, runs them through the whole process, and rather make it easier to actually build those packages. But yeah, you can of course just use the Salt file system, and we are looking into scenarios, especially for content distribution, in retail, for example, when they do their pricing update, it's daily and it's not always RPMs, to trigger it using Salt and the Salt file system. And maybe then, if we run into problems with scalability, rather extend the Salt file system, for example, using a Ceph backend or so, or peer-to-peer, rather than reinventing yet another wheel here.
So that's the official answer. The real answer is don't get in the habit of doing it because it's really hard to version it, right? So that's the reason why RPMs exist, and the SUSE Manager database is really designed around helping you to validate consistency across the package portfolio that way. But I mean, obviously there's other stuff, like you said, distributing config files and other things that you need to do that aren't necessarily executables. But the functionality within SUSE Manager is there for you to parse that and patch that and version it based on RPMs. Yes, we can do, right. And we can do versioning of that. But obviously the Salt stuff, like you said, Joe, really enhances our ability to deliver that.
You mentioned a couple of things SUSE and Salt. Is the version of Salt and SUSE, like, do they have a match, or can you upgrade from Salt on SUSE Manager?
Okay, so the question is, the version that we're using integrated into SUSE Manager, can that be independently upgraded?
So first of all, to be really honest, we haven't figured out all the details yet in terms of how you are going to be supported if you have a support contract from SUSE and from SaltStack, especially when you have the enterprise product. We will align those roadmaps. At the moment, we don't make any specific assumptions. So as long as Salt says, okay, this version is still backwards compatible with the others, and for most modules that's pretty often the case, you shouldn't run into problems. The one that we support is always the one we ship with SUSE Manager, and we'll do updates regularly to stay on mostly the recent Salt versions, maybe lagging a bit behind for quality control, not always picking, like we are not on a 2016 stage at the moment, of course. We are on 2015 8.8 or something. What is it?
Yeah, but
usually you'd have enough instrumentation to actually onboard a machine with almost any old version of the Salt Minion, and then of course you'd have to use Salt to upgrade the Salt Minion first thing, and then go from there.
And one of the interesting things that it opens up for us is the ability to see non-Linux clients in SUSE Manager, which we haven't had in the past. So we haven't figured out how to where the support lines fall on some of those things, but it's of interest, especially of our customers that run AIX and other platforms that we don't have clients for natively for SUSE Manager. Yes, Simon?
The scheduling thing, have you ever find those things? You've got some advice that are in Europe, some in the US.
Yeah, there's an answer. It should work. Servers in other countries, the units are anywhere else. So, yeah.
When you click on schedule, it's very complicated.
Well, it's,
It should be converted all correctly.
yeah, and the time is,
But it's complex.
on SUSE Manager, the time that you see in the web UI is associated with your user ID. So you can, if your user is associated with a certain time zone, that's what you see. But it's supposed to interpret it fairly according to the time that, when you see the scheduler, it's the SUSE Manager time that you see.
Yeah, but for the start, you imagine situations where you want to schedule just at 11 o'clock at night, server local time.
We support that, and if it does work, then it's fine. But we already had an engineer working on exactly the correct conversion.
Okay, we're being booted out, so thanks guys, appreciate your time.